Hi everyone, this is Shivani. You see me at every other webinar. Thank you so much for joining this session. I believe this is one of the most sought after sessions this month so far. I've got a lot of sign-ups and interest that's been flowing in for this session. So thank you so much again for joining in. We are essentially talking about a sales masterclass, crushing your quarter 4 targets. I have two amazing seasoned sales professionals who are here to talk about it. But before we get into that, let me just take you through what we will be covering today. So we will be talking about managing growth in the face of daunting targets, how to manage expectations from the management, leading a team in high pressure situations. That's something I think we've all been there, regardless of which team we belong to, and ensuring continuous growth at scale rather. So to take us through, we have Arjun, who is an associate director at Eruditus, and we have Anil, who is the director of sales at Lead Squared. So as always, I would like our speakers to please share a few lines about themselves and share something that most of us don't know. So Arjun, with this one, I would like you to go first. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, of course, a little more also about Eruditus.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Arjun. I'm an engineer by degree. So was one of the many IIT graduates a few years back. Immense pressure. All the relatives used to show me packages of 1 crore plus, and I used to be sort of the duckling there. But took up to revenue management, and in my past 4 or 5 years, I have led revenue teams. Very honestly, it's almost a validation for myself to do a sales masterclass because I was floundering like many of you till a few months back. But with experience, with understanding a few factors, with guidance from the correct folks, I'm now in a position to finally able to guide and mentor others, and happy to share all that gyan and much more through the session.
That's great. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people here who are on the same boat, or who were at least, and would love to learn from you. Anil, let's go with you. You've obviously taken so many webinars for Lead Squared. You're a pro at this now. So let's hear from you. Please share a few lines and, of course, your experience in this domain.
Thanks, Shivani. Thanks, Arjun. I am still to figure out whether I'm a pro or not. Hi, everyone. This is Anil. I basically work in the capacity of a sales lead for Lead Squared. I think that everybody knows so far. Apart from it, I have a couple of hobbies. I play cricket for an academy in Gurgaon, still at this age also. And apart from this, I have a couple of boring habits. Let's say I'm a guest faculty at a couple of B schools wherein I go and give students a lot of gyan on how practically sales works in a corporate life, other than the books and the fundamentals that you study in college. So these are more or less about me. And with that, I think we can start. Yeah, Shivani.
Sure. Thank you, Anil. I'm sure your students are waiting to learn from you. So with that, let me just tell the audience. So you guys see a chat option there. So anything you want to say, hi, hello, anything interesting you want to share with us, please put it there. There is a question tab for any questions you have. Arjun and Anil will take them up at the end of the session. And we also have a polls tab where you will see a poll coming up. We would love to hear from you. With that, let's begin the session. If the presentation could please come up. Awesome.
Super. Sure. So guys, we'll go for a Q&A session for those who are fans of Coffee with Karan. I don't like to say it proudly, but Anil and I shall run the session that way. So Anil, the first question to you. You are a seasoned sales professional, have worked across the biggest names in the industry. It is said in sales that a target is not a target unless it's ambitious and daunting. How have you, through all these years in sales, revenue management, have managed to manage growth in all these years? Will be really.
Thank you so much, Arjun. I think I'll take it. I'll take this question up. So I joined Lead Squared. I think I'll cover up the story of my recent journey. So I joined Lead Squared last year, April 2020. And when I joined, we were around, let's say, 350 odd employees in the organization. And all of a sudden, today, if you look at, we are around 800 plus people. Now, with that, when I joined, it was a growing organization. And since the teams have also grown to a limit, let's say I started with 4 people and then we are now 14-member team. So I kind of divided the team into 3 pieces. So let's say somebody will manage a mid-market, somebody will do an enterprise, somebody will do an education. Now with that thought process, I thought I set up a monthly cadence. And with that thought process, I went to my one of my founders and I told him that I want to set up a monthly cadence to kind of achieve and see, to basically check whether what milestones are we achieving.
Got it.
And what I hear from him is, Anil, how serious are you to set up and drive this cadence? To
Got
which
it.
I replied, I'm committed. And then he said, then you have to drive it weekly. You have to break it.
Got
And
it.
I had my reservations when I said that, Anil, you should break it weekly. But then it was month of January when we started following this activity, and we stand today in August. I think I followed what he said, and I feel he was absolutely right. The point that he mentioned, that yes, you need to break the bigger milestones into weekly or daily, so that you can at least track where are you moving, where are you heading, and how the year will look like. So that is one takeaway from the recent organization. Then I think we all know that in sales, we put a lot of deals into pipeline. So our teams will put a lot of deals into pipeline. And let's say being a senior leader, when you know the team has grown to an exponential level, it becomes very difficult. So let's say if I ask somebody a question tomorrow who's not directly involved in one of the customer discussions, or let's say one of the deal pipelines directly with the end customer, the only thing that you're relied upon is you can only go and ask your sales teams that how the deals are progressing, and you have to take a word of mouth, or either you can rely on let's say a trend analysis that, okay, fine, the deals which enter into the funnel, 50% of them close in this particular industry, or 40% of them close in this particular industry.
Yes.
Now, if we talk about today, we have tools available wherein you can go and check that, okay, fine, these are 20 deals I see in my team's pipeline. At each deal, what is my salesperson doing? What is the engagement that he has with the customer? So he might have made 10 phone calls to a customer, but how many times the customer has called him back is something that is trackable today. So you can basically check the score of engagement in the funnel pipeline, and that is very crucial, basically. So with that thought, I think these things and these technologies are basically helping me so far in kind of managing the targets and the growth.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's really interesting, Anil, and absolutely agree with you on all the points. We ourselves, in all the good performing revenue and growth setups that I've seen, they have actually followed the pointers that you have shared to the point. So yeah, really interesting to see you sharing the same school of thought as well. Just adding my 2 points here, because I was lucky enough that the first time I got revenue management, like I got to lead both marketing and sales. And I'm sure a lot of you, like marketing and sales, like a lot of people say, like they can't be on the same page in a lot of things. But trust me that if you're looking to create a stable setup, are looking to create a high growth setup, then both sales and marketing need to collaborate together, need to understand from each other that where they can win, what is going wrong, and ultimately just support each other. Like in a lot of setups which have not worked well, like marketing is pinpointing at sales, hey, listen, you guys aren't converting, we are giving you the best leads in the world. The sales is pushing back at marketing, and it's an ongoing tussle. Now, the good and the great folks are differentiated by how constructively and beautifully can you manage that tussle. I myself have been lucky to be part of like really quality teams, and I think that's where the hiring, the company culture and all comes into being. But if you have like great folks, every one of them will relish each other's success because they know it's feeding into the overall growth, which ultimately obviously pans out well for you. Speaking in terms of uncertainty of revenue management and all, so many of you would have firsthand felt that, oh great, I'm on track to hit my targets, this is going to be an amazing month, tons of bonuses waiting for me at the end of this, I'm going to buy a new TV, new PlayStation, new Xbox. And the last day or last week, all of a sudden the targets just falter, the pipeline doesn't come through. Now, this is where it's very important that at the beginning of a cycle, if you have a target of, let's say, 100 rupees or $100, rather than just planning your life and work and your team's work around $100, my take is, why not shoot for 20 to 15% higher? Now, the reason for that is that most of the targets, because they are ambitious, there are a lot of unknowns when it comes to revenue management. Now, it's really important for you to understand that and ride the uncertainty in your favor and just budget in for that buffer. Now, in case a few things don't fall, if, as Anil correctly mentioned, if the phone call that you have called the person 10 times, you yourself think that person will convert, and on the 11th call, the person said, hey, you know what, I'm not interested, you were the one after me. So that's where your backup really come through. And finally is what I have found a really great team bond and team building exercise is you have a massive countdown to the target written somewhere. Now, considering we are chasing a revenue number, so like what I used to do is I used to actually out of my own pocket purchase a whiteboard and put it up in our sales room and put the quarterly revenue target on there. Now, every time someone got in a payment or got in any success, the person would actually get a chance to get up and subtract that amount from that target. Now, seeing that number moving, plus seeing that number always in front of your eyes while you're working, motivated the team. Like it was so easy for me to motivate as a manager. I'll just tell a salesperson, hey, listen, you know how far are we from target? That number. Now, what that helps is for everyone to bond and build towards one thing. And like, you don't need me to tell how important it is for a team to chase one target passionately. You have seen that in Chak De, you have seen that in De Dhanadhan Goal and so many. So yeah, that's a great team building and the revenue hitting hack. And be it Q4, be it Q2, be it Q1, be it Q3, it is a great hack to have. So yeah, trust me, like you too can be a Kabir Khan if you just follow these pointers that Anil and I have shared. And you too can have a blockbuster at your hand.
Wonderful, Arjun. I think with that, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
That how do you manage the expectations from the management, from the senior management rather, not the management? So with that question, yeah.
Yeah, true. No, it was honestly like subset of calm, very honestly, Anil. And you correctly, like you mentioned that, yeah, if my co-founder was to see this session, yeah, he'll obviously have certain questions. So yeah, just handling upper management. If I can have the next slide. So handling upper management, guys. So be it, let's say you are an associate right now, you have a manager to report into. It is very important to understand from them what are the targets and how you are going to break it down for them and make them a stakeholder in this. So rather than आप अकेले अपनी रातों की नींद खराब करेंगे thinking about the target, how do you hit it? You essentially are buying from them. So let's say if Anil is my boss, I tell Anil, hey Anil, this is how we are planning to hit this target of 1 crore. I'm going to do 25 lakh of B2B sales, 25 lakh of digital marketing sales, 25 lakh of that, 25 lakh of that. Now, if Anil agrees to the idea, and God forbid if those numbers aren't coming through or we are over exceeding, then Anil is a stakeholder or a bought-in person for me. So I can then easily go to Anil, ask for guidance. Anil will be more than happy to help me because he knows that he's part of the process. Rather than just telling the senior management, yes, sir, you can relax easy, I got this. Like, because then the perks are obviously that the success is yours, but most importantly, the failure is then all yours. And honestly, in high growth startups and high growth companies, most of the times hitting those target numbers just is very difficult. So which is why I would say keep just pally up with your boss. I wouldn't call it chaplacy and all. Please don't resort to that. But yeah, make them an active contributor to your thought process. And it feeds into the ask for help thing. And that's very important for you to know when you are stuck. There is no shame in asking for help. End of the day, everyone in the company is working towards the betterment of the company, of the people, of the society. So it's fine if you say that, okay, I'm stuck. Even in trivia games where 1 crore rupees can be won, like Kaun Banega Crorepati, you have those lifelines. So guys, relax. Even in your real life, work life, you do have these lifelines. The smart person is the one who can choose those and use those wisely. At that note, I'll actually, Anil, would love for you to add some more color to this as to how you in your experience have managed to handle the upper management and everyone else.
Thanks, Arjun. I think this was really insightful from your side. I think in my case, it is very clear. It is very eminent what my management, what my senior management would expect. So I have a designated quota for the year, which is my budget, and it is evident to everybody that this is the number that Anil probably needs to achieve by end of the year. Now, when we talk about sales, at times we are serving very complex use cases to very complex industries. So let's say, for example, you have one product which fits into multiple industries, right? Now, you can be a market leader, the few you are still trying to make inroads into those industries. So, for example, we may be a market leader, let's say for education, but then there are a few other industries wherein still we are trying to make our inroads. Now, it is very important to recognize these first intruders who enter into such new industries, and you need to create case studies around it. Now,
Right.
being a leader, it is an absolute responsibility of a leader to kind of realize that there are new use cases, and the transformation of that knowledge has to be seamless within the team. So
Right.
few people might make an entry into new industries, but you have to ensure that everybody knows about how and what sort of objections basically are coming from these specific new industries. So if you are able to kind of create an environment wherein the teams are talking about new use cases that they are bringing, I think you're done. Matlab, half of the things are done for you. So what we have done is in my team, what we have done instead of asking and discussing numbers every day, in first 2 days of the week, we are just discussing that what critical cases are we bringing on the table and how one is kind of handling those objections. Now, since we all know that during from the pandemic, we all are working from home majorly. I think I have been working from home so far. Only doing client meetings, not going to office per se. But then and at the same time, we are also working with the new age people. I am not call myself an old age guy, but then yes, I am from a different era, and I think I work with a lot of new age people. And you need to understand that the new age people are smart today. They know what their roles and responsibilities are in the organization, and everybody is working from home, and it is obviously building certain amount of pressure or let's say some amount of tension. So, being a leader, one needs to ensure that people should have the flexibility towards working hours, right? You can just push people that no, you wake up 9 o'clock in the morning and you make a punch, you punch the system. No, that is not a culture that we follow. So, I think if you allow people to have the flexibility, as long as they are able to kind of meet the numbers, meet the goals, I think one has to give them the flexibility to kind of operate and achieve their numbers or their designated quotas. I think you're good to go. You will be able to sail through the expectations of the management. If your team is satisfied, your management expectations will be met. This is what I feel.
That's super insightful, Anil, and completely agree with you. Pandemic has forced us to think of flexible working hours, to have a remote team, and yeah, it's kudos to how you have grown the team in that time period, and I'm sure it will set up a marker for the times to come. Super. Cool. So speaking of pressure, you mentioned you use the term pressure when it came to pandemic, remote teams and all. So pressure and revenue expectations go hand in hand. I'm yet to see a person who's like absolutely carefree, Scots-free, relaxing in a revenue management role. So the core question, and I think this can very easily be the first, second, and third, and the fourth question of this webinar, on how do you lead a team in such situations, Anil? Would be great to get your thoughts on that.
I'll tell you a small story, and the story starts with this: that managing pressure is nothing. It is just sticking to the basics is important. I still remember those days when I started my career. I was reporting to a manager who came from insurance industry. My day used to start like this. I used to get two messages. One in the morning, which used to be a very motivational message that sky is the limit and you can do whatever you want to achieve in your life. And the second message used to be simple 3 words: business for the day. Now, a lot of people might be from the audience might be thinking that how this is possible in a B2B scenario. And trust me, I was working for a B2B sales. It was not a B2C wherein I'm going and knocking doors and getting sale done. And I think back then we never had the luxury of LinkedIn.
Right.
Yes. So how do you figure out people, right? So you have been assigned a designated territory. I used to go and map my entire territory. So let's say from office A1 to AZ, I used to have complete mapping. I used to walk inside each office. I used to drop my visiting card, and I ensured that I mapped the entire territory. So I think sales works on a very simple principle. Initial first 6 months, it was very difficult for me. First 6 months, I had just first 6 orders, 1 order a month. And after 6 months, I never looked back. I think I always did my numbers. I always overachieved. So it works on a very simple principle of maths. You talk to 10 people, 5 will talk business, and let's say 2 will or 3 or 4 will give business, depending on the industry skill set that you have or that you possess. But dialing those 10 numbers is important. So one has to see that, okay, fine, my quota is this. If these are the people that I dial every day, this will lead me there. So
Right.
one has to break the goals. One has to break and map the activities also. So let's say I have to dial 10 numbers, I'll dial 10 new numbers today. So if you are able to kind of reach to a level wherein you are able to define these, I'm sure and I can assure you that you will never have high pressure in no matter how bad the situation is. So you'll always be able to sail through, but you have to stick to the basics. The basics is very simple, which I explained. Uh,
Awesome.
yes, over to you, Arjun. I think I would like to hear your thoughts that how are you leading teams in high pressure
Yeah.
situations?
Yeah, no, that's super insightful, Anil. I actually did the mistake early on in my managerial career to look at Wolf of Wall Street and look at leadership lessons from there. Obviously, that didn't fly well with the team because I am no Leonardo DiCaprio, and obviously the industry was very different and all. But just the sheer aggression that was there in that movie towards targets, towards achieving them, great in some aspects, but obviously it's very detrimental in a lot of other factors. What I found to be very helpful in my journey so far is firstly build your team very well. So this technically transcends your quarter 4 outlook. Technically, you should have the team in place to do that first. Now, when I say a good team, I'll tell you what are the perks and advantages of that. So let's say I'm a senior leader of the team. I've got a team of, let's keep it very simple. It's a team of telecallers under me. Now, there are certain resources who actually go over and beyond their duty, their role to achieve numbers. Now, I'm not saying cutting corners or doing something, let's say, distasteful, but these people, I technically specially connected one-on-one with them, shared the bigger picture of how we wish to grow the business, and they sort of became my mini managers within the pod. Now, how that was helpful is if I'm managing a team of 10, I've got 3 such leaders. Now, if there is a person who's not doing well or facing any issues or is absent, now these mini managers actually stepped up of their own accord, which in turn over coming quarters saw them moving very fast into managerial roles, director roles, VP roles. Now, that is an attribute which is rare in any employee, and I would actually encourage all the listeners here today on the session to inculcate that between you, which is technically just being very mindful of what you own and how you can impact that. Now, if you are just obsessive about the target, and be it not just your work targets, even your personal life targets, now that is just going to help you offset the pressure, because all of a sudden the clarity comes through. Now, if you're just trying your hand half-heartedly at everything, now that just becomes much more difficult. And technically, this whole thing will only happen when it brings me to the third point on the sheet here, which is building a supportive team. Now, many times, like people say that competition between peers is great. Now, there is obviously a line to be drawn in terms of this competition. Now, you cannot have people each other at their throats, because then instead of building towards a common good, people are just fighting for their own numbers, which in due course, I can tell you, maybe your Q4 targets will be met, but for the coming years, for the coming months, it is going to be detrimental to the company. So it is very important that you as a leader, even you as a typical employee, ensure that there is a supportive team. Have those pizza lunches. In remote working, obviously it's much more difficult, but order pizza for everyone. Have ice creams together. Now these are things which are over and beyond our office life. But trust me, when you are chasing a common target, it's very important that you try to have an outlet which allows you to bond outside of your work. And most importantly, for leaders, just keep on motivating. It's very easy for you as a senior leader getting pressure from the top management that, hey, listen, this target needs to be met. Where are we so far? What are we going to do? Now, a good leader is the one who can technically insulate their team from this pressure. They should be mindful. They should share with them that, listen, hey, team, we are chasing an ambitious target, but everyday pressure just can get on anyone's nerves. Now, that's a sign of a good leader, manager, or an employee, that they insulate the people around them from this pressure so that everyone can do their best job. So, all in all, those are my learnings from creating $1 million educational programs with Upgrad, with Eruditus. And I'm sure a lot of you will benefit, regardless of industry, regardless of vertical. I'm sure these will stand you in good state.
Wonderful, Arjun. I think to motivation, I'll add one more point. So
Yeah, please, Anil.
Yes. So I think we started working from I never joined office. I think I was interviewed in the office, but I never joined office. Unfortunately, I worked from home, and it was almost a year that we never met the team. Actually, I never met the team actually. And the best part is, I realized that it's almost a year that we have been working from home and we're not able to catch up with each other. We stay in the same city. And one fine day we met. We decided, all of us decided it was pandemic, it was February. All of us decided that fine, we want to leave everything and we want to go to Goa. So I think the first meeting that I met with my team was about Goa. I think, and it was an amazing journey. So I think, and even that has left a lot of good memories. And the team is so spontaneous that at times they'll feel that they'll make very spontaneous plans. Forget about pizza and lunches. Ours is like goes beyond those. I will not like to discuss them here. Yeah. So it's very spontaneous, and we make very instant plans. But then, yes, I think the good part is that every member of the team is so supportive and so available that if somebody makes a plan, people are available and people we sit together, we discuss office or whatever, and then we enjoy. We have good time. So I think that is very important. Considering you're working from home, there is no office. I think meeting people and ensuring that you keep meeting your team outside the work, that is more important, I would say.
True. Yeah, and just let me know when can I sign up to be in your team. It sounds like a super fun thing.
Anytime, I think you'll be more than welcome.
Super.
Yes, so I think ensuring continuous growth at rapid scale. As I mentioned, everybody, right? 350 people last year. Today we stand at 800, and I think by the end of the year, we may be 1,000+ employee company, and that is very important to hire the right talent. I think whenever I speak with Nilesh, Nilesh is one of our founders, and he says that Anil, my biggest learning, or let's say my biggest challenge, is hiring right people. So that is a thing that I'm still learning, and I think I have taken multiple interviews. I think I may not even have a count today that how many people that we have interviewed and then we shortlisted and then we hired. But I think I would agree to him. Hiring is one of the most difficult and very critical jobs for a leader. Now, and one wrong hire, it's like it makes a lot of delay in the process, right? Imagine, think of a situation that you have hired one senior person and then you are thinking that with this person, an X number could be met by end of the year. But then if that person is not able to deliver, if he's not the right fitment, if he's not the cultural fit, uh, it is a major fallback on a leader because that space remains vacant, and then the next hiring will take a lot of time, and then training takes time, coaching takes time. Those all take a lot of time. So I think hiring is something that I would definitely say that it is one of the most critical aspect when you want to hire people. Hire right people. Right hiring for various organizations could be different. I think what I've learned from my stint is that you basically hire people who can fit into the culture of the organization. That is number one. And obviously the team that you have, which is an existing team, that has a standard, that has a benchmark. Now any new candidate that you hire, either he should be an average of the existing standards, or either he should be above, so that the existing teams can have certain amount of competition. And I think that is very important. So if you want to grow on a rapid pace, on a rapid scale, hiring right people, hiring the right talent is definitely very crucial. And you also need to kind of train them and coach them to a limit that they start performing, right. When I've sold I've sold new products, though I've worked with very large MNCs, but then I have been fortunate enough that I've sold new products of these large MNCs, and whenever I used to make phone calls to any customer, my discussions used to start with the no. So the initial pitches made, people used to say, no, Anil, we know your organization, but then this is something that we may not need. Now, I think that is something which has made me refine my pitches, and that helped me identify that it is a process, right? Selling is a process, and that process has to be standardized so that you can train and coach your team members. Now, today I feel that in my current organization, or let's say in my past organization, selling process could be, let's say, 130, 150 or 200 objections, that common objections that you get from the customers. Now, if being a leader, if you're able to identify those 150 common objections, and if you can
Hmm.
lay out well to your team, so let's say there are 10 common objections that I know today that they will come on the legal side. So if I share a legal agreement, these are 10 common objections that may come.
Yeah.
And I think when I joined, I think we had a law firm that we used to work, but then we have not shared all the agreements to them because there were some minute tweaks that the customer we used to ask, and we knew the answers, right? So since we negotiated so many contracts, we knew that these are 10 common objections that a customer will throw at us, and we will be able to handle it. So if a leader is able to lay out those objections very well, if he can define it in a piece of paper and present it to the team, I think, trust me, half of the coaching and mentoring for the team is done other than the product. And if you know your product well, that is like icing on the cake. If you know the product well, then you will be able to create interest of the customer, for your product. So I think these are very important aspects that I would say.
Absolutely.
So yes, and then
Absolutely.
I think I would also like to cover the last point. I think the challenge that I foresee today, and the biggest problem in today's world is I interact with a lot of CEOs and CFOs and CTOs. The biggest problem that I see in today's world is we are not able to define, we are not able to identify how to get a hybrid system in place, how to get the hybrid system correctly in place. I think I see that a lot of people still want to have a traditional approach wherein they say that one tool will suffice all the needs of all my teams. ERP will basically help me evolve, or let's say an ERP will basically help me achieve all the team targets or quotas or budgets. So, for example, a finance team would need a tally, not ERP typically. A complaints team would need, or a team which is handling customer complaints would typically need a ticketing system. Similarly, a sales team would need a tool which can bring velocity in their sales. It can, for the right people, one has to hire and have right tools so that you get the hybrid correct in the today's scenario. So there are multiple platforms, they interact with each other, and they only cater to individual needs. They cater to a specific department need. So I think that is one has to identify to ensure that you grow at a rapid scale.
Interesting.
Yes.
Bang on, Anil. No, completely agree. And I actually second your thoughts on hiring. All of you would have seen so many posts on LinkedIn that, hey, we are looking to hire. And that's the reason, folks, that what differentiates right now a good company from a great company is the sort of people working for it. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen on LinkedIn the company Bharat Pay, like they are giving away super bikes, they are giving away trips to Europe, Dubai, and all, just to ensure that they have the right talent in place.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the key things how I try to solve for quality of talent, because sadly my bosses have not given me the right to dole out motorbikes, nice vacations, and everything, is you technically, rather than just hiring for the particular role. So let's say you're hiring for a sales associate or you're hiring for a marketing associate, rather than just looking for the fit of the person for that particular role, think if they can be a marketing manager very soon. Now, how that helps you is, you also, rather than just keeping that vision to yourself, you should share that vision with the person. So technically, if you share that vision with the person and the person is actually excited to do it, it's like a match made in heaven. So you know what you want out of this person knows what this job holds for them, and then all of you, when you get to work, like magic happens. So it's really important that you check if this person is not just good to go for the next 6 months, but potentially can be an asset for the times to come. And then I wish this was an original hiring ideology I had, but Google had the same one, a small startup called Google. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard of it. And today it's one of the biggest names in the world just because of the quality of talent. Like, people laughed at them when they were doing this, that, hey, why are you doing this? You're paying so much money for a simple resource. Hey, why are you giving them lunch and dinner at office? Why do you have washing machines in your office? And but they continued at it, continued getting the best people, and crazy things happen for them in times to come. So it's important. So even though the title of the webinar says crushing your Q4 targets, but it's also more about ensuring that you're good to go for the times to come as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. That was a very, very nice session. I can tell you, I learned a lot, and I didn't realize that, Anil, that nowadays people can use LinkedIn, right? And that is not something
That was not available.
Yeah, that's just one of the things that strike me. Okay, let's dive into questions. Amit, I
Yeah.
do see a question, but I think you should elaborate a bit on that. So I will park that aside, but do get back to us with an elaboration. I will move to Dhani's question. Again, forgive me if I have mispronounced your name. So he says, in today's world, the competition is immense. Be that in any industry, what is the key thing to target apart from relationship building?
Anil, can you take this? Like, you are much better. I
Yeah,
am a
yeah, yeah,
B2C
yeah.
guy.
So
Relationship building is
I
not
think
really strong.
I would agree there is tough competition, and ask us. I think we are Lead Squared. I think there are so many CRM organizations, so nobody can answer better than us. Yes, I would agree with you. Yes, there is tough competition in the market. But as I mentioned, if a salesperson sticks to the basic, right? If you ensure that you're reaching out to X number of people every day, and if you have defined the common objections, that these are the particular 5-10 objections that I get. So let's say when you say competition, one common question that you may be getting from your customer is, how are you different than the other product which is competing with you? So if you have those answers ready with you, if you know these are the 5, 7, 10 objections that you get, and if you know your product well, if you know that how it is better than the competition, I think you'll sail through. There is no stopping by. So I think those basics have to be clear. First, you reach out to customers. Second, you know the objections that you will get from the customer, and you should know what USP one has in the product. So I think that is all from my side to that.
Okay, Arjun, do you have anything to add to that, or should I?
Yeah. So technically in B2C sales, we call it rapport building. Because very honestly, it's not as much as a relationship, because in B2C, technically it's transactional sales. So you do it, and then obviously the person becomes a consumer of your product. But rapport building, technically in the world of telesales, email sales, like you are communicating with them over email, over calls. Now that starts from the moment you say hello. So I'll give you a very short example, which I actually give to all my sales team. It can be, hello, hey Dhwani, how are you doing today? Can be very different. Output can come out of, hey Dhwani, how are you doing today? So it's really important how you start off and how you nurture the lead. And ultimately, like, the person shouldn't feel that they are buying something. They should see that it's something of value which I'm getting. Now that is very critical in B2C. And again, as Anil correctly said, in B2B, it is all the more critical, this relationship.
Yes, I think B2B also it is very important. So more than the relationship, no matter how much good relationship you have with a CFO or a CTO of an organization, end of the day they're going to buy a product which will benefit the organization. So value sells first, no doubt. Whether it is B2C, B2B, it is a common thumb rule everywhere.
Okay. Okay, speaking of B2C now, Vijay's question is, too much follow-up in B2C case advisable? Essentially, where do you draw the line?
So I think Vijay, you said, right?
This is
Yeah,
Vijay.
Vijay.
Vijay. So Vijay, I think too much follow-up. I think you should have right systems in place. Right now the world is moving towards automation. I mean, you should have right systems in place which can tell you. So let's say you can define a benchmark. The systems can define a benchmark for you. Then let's say after 5, 10 follow-ups, let's say a particular category of customer closes, whether it is B2C, B2B, both can be. This is replicable in both. You define a parameter that, okay, fine, after these many follow-up, a particular category of customer closes, and after these many follow-ups, let's say a customer is basically, let's say, a churn customer, or a customer is a cold customer. Now you have platforms available today, you have automations available today. You don't have to follow up. The system can follow up on your behalf, and it can give you the intelligence. It can tell you when to follow up with the customer, with whom to follow up, and what date to follow up. So you have the right tools and technology available today, and you can leverage any one of that. I think this will help you a lot. This is what I feel. Yes.
Okay, Princely has a similar question. How many calls a day is ideal for B2B prospecting? So if you want to add anything to that.
So, Princely, it depends on the target. It depends on the quota which your manager has assigned to you, and you obviously need to have some data to back it up. So, let's say you can look at your past month's data. You can look at the month's data wherein, let's say, you have achieved numbers, and how many follow-ups, how many calls have had this ideally being taken to reach or to achieve a goal in a specific month should be the benchmark for you. So you can define those, and those are easy numbers. So one has to come back and think that what we are doing, and whom we are reaching out, and how many follow-ups I'm doing. I think one has to come back home and give some time to give some thought to it. You have all the answers with you. It will vary basically from industry to industry. So there is no specific number for any industry. So let's say, for example, I work with IBM. The sales cycle used to be different. A deal used to get mature and get closed in a year. I work with Times. The sales cycle used to be much shorter. I work with Lead Squad. 2-3 months you can sell a product. Like anybody who new joins, 2-3 months you are good to have a deal. I worked with organizations like LexisNexis. You reach out to big four firms like KPMG, Deloitte, PwC. There the buying cycles could be 6 months, 7 months. So it depends what kind of sale, what kind of infrastructure you are in, and I think those answers are there with you. I would say you just have to sit back and analyze. That is all.
Sure. Okay, before I quickly go on to the next question, there are polls available, everyone. Otherwise, my content team is going to get very upset with me. So please go and respond to that. Okay, next question from Melaka. Again, I'm not very good with names. So key to build strong pitch during closures. Is there any secret phrase or couple of words that you use that always makes a difference at the end? To both of you, Arjun, Anil.
Yeah.
So I'll leave this for Arjun and
Sure. Yeah, so generally, Melaka, one of the tricks or one of the North Star that we use is that if in a sales conversation, if the sales advisor is talking more than the person who's looking to buy, then the deal is lost. Okay. So technically in a conversation, you need to ensure that the person who has inquired about the product, about the program, they need to be inquiring and talking about it a bit more. Now, how does that happen? You ask them, why do they need it? You ask them surrounding reasons. So if you just ask them point blank questions, hey, hello, like let's say I'm selling a OnePlus phone. Now, if someone has registered an inquiry, hey, I want to buy a OnePlus phone. If I straight away start with, hey, this phone has a great camera, it has a RAM of 8 GB. Now you have lost the customer by then. So which is why it's very important. You firstly understand why do they need it, and then customize and tailor your approach basis that. So let's say if I ask the person, sir, that's fine. This phone is an amazing entity. Why do you need it? And it could be, hey, I'm a father. My daughter is graduating from college. I want to gift her. Now, then you say, oh, sir, your daughter, I'm sure she'll be very active on Instagram. Now, you need a camera with an amazing front camera. And trust me, that's where we are the best in class. So it's really important you understand where the person is coming from and then connect the dots. So it's really important you get them talking, and which is why I mentioned earlier, it feeds into the rapport building because they'll only talk and converse with you more once they are comfortable with you. So yeah, that's my hack, Melaka, and yeah, it has stood me well so far, but yeah, happy to be corrected.
Okay. Thani, your question next, and I know Anil, you're going to like this. What are the top 3 sales tools you will suggest? But then in brackets in IT, he's in IT sales. But what are the top 3 sales tools that I think I can just leave this open-ended? What have actually helped y'all, both of you? As in, which 3 sales tools would you recommend?
I think I work with Lead Squad, and it's a core software. It's a core software that we sell. And if you ask us, we use our own tool, right, Shivani? You do a lot of marketing.
Yes.
Shivani does a lot of marketing. So I'll give you a story of a very large automobile customer, and the credit goes all to Shivani. Wow. So we use our own platform for our own salespeople, and Shivani does a lot of marketing campaigns. Now, I was chasing one customer. He's a CTO from a large automobile company. And I must have called him almost 3-4 months I was chasing. And one fine day, he opened one of the Shivani's email. And now the system has given us an inherited knowledge that the moment somebody opens an email, the moment somebody visits my website, I would know. Being a salesperson, the customer is assigned to me. I would know by hand that he is doing these activities, and the system is smart enough that it tells me that what date it is active. So past 4 months I'm chasing, the customer never responded. But one of the Shivani's marketing emails made the mantra, had the mantra, and he opened the email. And after that, the activities kept growing on. So he started visiting landing pages, and to a specific set of marketing campaigns, he started responding. He started opening up. Now, every time he opens it, I come to know that he's watching. Then one fine day, I called him. I said, "Sir, I see that you are looking at these things on my website on regular basis. Is there something that I can help you with?" And he was flabbergasted by the thought that we have a system today which can track these. And he said, "Can you do the same for my customers?" The answer was yes. And we have a deal through today. So I think you have to choose the right tool. I would not say you take Beatsbot, but you choose the right tool. It could be any software, but then yes, for IT sales, for B2B sales, we use our own software, and our growth is evident. Our growth is visible to all. From 300 to 800 and 1,000 journey in a year is something that we are talking about, and our revenues are also growing exponentially. The Deloitte Fast 50 award talks about it. So, so yeah, with that, I would like to pass it to Arjun if he has to add anything.
Oh, no. IT sales, yeah, no idea. Absolutely blank.
Okay. Moving to Raja's question, I think he was referring to something you both were talking about. I'm not sure what it was, but he said, what kind of sales are you referring? Is it SaaS product sales or commodity sales such as FMGG products?
FMCG or GG?
Yeah,
Okay,
got to be.
FMCG. FMCG.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Any
so FMCG products and all. So let's understand, right? What sort of products do people have to sell, right? So there are FMCG products, there are garments, and all. You basically go to a bricks and mortar shop and you buy those, right? So there is the salesperson that they are available in those shops. You basically go. They basically work on a pull mechanism. They do some paper, newspaper advertisement, TV advertisement, and you, or let's say an online advertisement, and you walk inside these stores. So FMCG is also similar, right? To sell a shampoo or let's say a soap, I think a telephone sales is not required. A salesperson is not required. He can either go online, he can buy it, or either he can go to a kirana store and take it. Now, when it comes to complex products which make a lot of value for an organization, or let's say they make a lot of value for a child, or let's say a parent or any B2C customer, there you need to you need a sales team who is empowered enough, who is knowledgeable enough to kind of go ahead and explain these products to the customer. There you need a sales team. Otherwise, rest for FMCG products, I think it is not required much. What you can do is in FMCG products, if you actually want to explore, uh, you can uh, you can have you can have a very complex journey of a customer. If you, let's say, if you are an Amazon or Flipkart, you can have a very complex journey of a customer. So let's say Anil is a customer. Anil is buying ABCD products on Amazon. Now Anil will have a migration journey, and that migration journey duration could be 30 days. So let's say Anil is migrating from ABCD to EFGH products in 30 days time in on Amazon. Now, if you want to reduce that cycle of 30 days to 25 days or 15 days, you can have an automation software wherein these personas for these customers are built. These customers are pre-built. So if you want to kind of roll up an FMCG sales on an e-commerce platform, you can use any of the automation software wherein the customer personas are defined. Today, let's say you're taking 30 days, you can shorten that sales cycle. And we are doing it for a couple of FMCG customers. So it came into my mind that you can shorten the sales cycle, and this could give a major revenue impact. So that sense, yes, FMCG products also fall into this category, but then these are more system driven rather than people driven. So yeah, that's all from my side. Arjun, if you add anything, or Shivani.
So Nagendra, very honestly, the my own understanding of sales principles and all has come from, very honestly, like SaaS products. Like I'm in the edtech space, so I don't know, like calling it SaaS is maybe incorrect, but it's definitely not an FMCG. But yeah, the principles, like talking to different people of different sectors, the principles actually hold true. So you can be selling a five rupee Parle-G bar to a shopkeeper, or you could be a person selling a BMW. Now those principles pretty much remain the same. Obviously, the finer points are missed out on a few, but yeah, that's about it.
Okay, I'm changing track slightly and I'm going to club two questions together because they're sort of similar. So Amit says, this is the first question that had come. So he's come back with an elaborated thing. He says,
Okay.
Amit says, what to do if a prospect is ignoring calls after the proposal? And Shomika has a similar question wherein how do we build resilience in sales? Working in high ticketed market and facing rejections demotivates the sales professional.
I think Shivani, you mixed two different questions, but
Is it? Oh, clearly I'm not one for sales. But okay, go on, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, see, I have a very different style when it comes to selling, and I'll be open about it. I think a lot of people know about this who know me. I don't chase customers too much, right? I always ensure that I have a healthy pipeline. to be honest, I am a salesperson, and if a salesperson calls me too many times, I'll not buy from him. That's a human mentality, right? If you chase somebody too much, be it relationships, be it a girlfriend boyfriend relationship, or a husband wife, or a parent child relationship, anywhere wherever you kind of push too much, people will back off, right? So that's how it works with customers as well. I generally follow a principle that once I've shared a proposal, I would always love to hear back from the customer, or either even if I have to do a follow up, I have a time frame in mind that after these many days I'll call him. Or generally, I think nowadays the tech is to such an advanced level that I know whether this customer will buy from me or not. So the moment I send a proposal, I share it in a link wherein I know that the moment he opens the link, what slide is he viewing, how much time has he spent on each slide. So I have those analytics, I have those data points available with me. So if somebody is not even opened my proposal, I'm least bothered to call him. So I think the right tech is missing, is what I feel from all the questions that I've answered so far. The right tools and technology is not available with most of the people. We are still living, and we are still struggling, and we are putting a lot of hard work, is what I feel from the questions which are coming. There is technology which is available, which can be leveraged, and it can ease off a lot of pain. So you would know whether the customer is open the proposal or not. If you have that intelligence, you will never chase the wrong customers.
Sure. Okay. Neha, here's your question. So any recommendations of courses or training platforms that can help our sales team groom, especially for cold calling?
Arjun, your cue.
Yeah, no. Yeah, our programs are from MIT, Kellogg, and also, yeah, sadly, we don't have anything on cold call.
Yeah, so she's also talked about hiring in the same
Got it.
area.
Got it.
Yeah, grooming freshers. Yeah.
Yeah, Neha, so very honestly, again, there is no ready reference or ready material out there. A lot of it, particularly for startups, because what you are doing, like you are in virgin territory, right? No, if you are doing a startup and someone has already done it, then easily you are in the wrong space, right? Like I can't hope to start a Byju's today. Like Byju's is already what it is, right? So technically, just my sense, like it is a lot of iteration. Like in this masterclass, I didn't share tons of other failures that we had to arrive at these learnings, right? So like a lot of pizza parties just went waste because like I was just enforcing them. So which is why I'm saying a lot of it is an iteration. So be open to failure. Tell your team to also like have that fear out of their mind. Because like if the team is scared of you as a manager or as a boss, then they are never going to be at their best level, right? Just the way you would have never seen that parents of a student with low grades were actually the strictest rather than parents of a high grader.
Ask
right?
me.
Yeah. So yeah, mine by that logic, mine were the strictest. And so yeah, guys. So very honestly, Neha, go for it. It is like it will require a lot of original thinking. At your point, talk to a lot of people who have been in similar space, like are starting up a company or are in the same vertical as yours. But yeah, end of the day, what you do on ground zero will technically boil down to you. So yeah, all the best with that. I learned it the hard way. So all the best.
Okay, I see one more question here, and I know that you have somewhat answered it, both of you, but I will, just for the benefit of everyone, Babu's question is, what kind of follow-up strategy would you follow for low-price services?
Interesting. Yeah, I have a ready one for that. So technically, Babu, just business logic. Now, if it's a low price product, you cannot afford to spend a lot of human, like people cost on it, right? You cannot have, like, I gave the Parle-G example. You don't have people going around from Parle selling a 5 rupee Parle-G, right? Because that person to justify their salary needs to sell 1 lakh packets. So technically, this is where, like, I think I feed into what Anil says. You should actually look to automate such processes.
Absolutely, yes.
So be it have a CRM system, be have a reminder email or something automated, a push notification or something like that to assist this conversion. And like this is where I defer to Anil because I'm sure he would have faced such questions multiple times.
Yes. Shivani has posted the Lead Squad link. Okay.
Yes. Okay, Amit has a last question. I think we can take that before we conclude. Is cold calling working today for B2B?
Cold calling will always work, no matter what systems you bring in. So let's say if you look at insurance today, I think most of the 60-70% of the businesses are done through cold calling. Even if you look at B2Bs today, whether it is LinkedIn or a random phone call, it is all cold calling, right? So cold calling will always work because your prospects will not reach out to you. We are not into an FMCG business. We are not putting a shop somewhere wherein people will just walk in and buy tools and technology. So I think cold calling will always work, and it will always have the charm. It will evolve with time. People would avoid certain people or certain pitches, I'm sure, with time. But I think one has to learn, one has to improvise the way they make the cold calls. I think if you're making a cold call, I think one has to sound very energetic. One has to need to have that smile while calling a person. I think there are a few tips that I generally use this, and it works. It always works. And I think cold calling will always remain there. Yeah. It is not going anywhere. No matter how many automations you bring in, it will remain.
True.
I mean, when I look at cold calling, I look at email marketing. A lot of people say is email marketing dead, and I'm like, no. I can tell you straight away, we still get our signups and we still get our demo requests and whatnot through email. So these are, I think, a few things that are here to stay always. With that, I think we can conclude. I don't see any further questions. Anyone still who haven't responded to the polls, please do. We have 30 more seconds before we conclude. And thank you so much, Arjun. Thank you so much, Anil, for taking the time and putting this presentation together and taking us through this, really. And of course, thanks to Kritika and Hiral for organizing this webinar.
I think okay. Yeah.
Thanks, thanks everyone for joining in. It was my first rodeo. Really enjoyed it. Took a lot of convincing and cajoling from the Lead Square team. But yeah, had they told me like this is how awesome the experience would be, would have signed up a lot earlier.
Thank you so much, Arjun. Thank you so much, Shivani, for organizing this. And I think I would like to thank the audience for giving us time and coming out on a busy day to attend this. I think we'll be coming up more insightful sessions in the future, and we'll try to keep it more interactive. I think thanks everybody, and looking forward to see you all in future soon. Thank you.
Yes, hopefully we can all meet soon.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.